All right, go ahead.
Okay, in the preface,
Speak loud.
I took a note that because he starts off with how like hard it was to write this book and how he has to face this like chapter in his life again and how like take it head on and how hard it's going to be, but it will resolve a lot of his problems that he's kept, like his inner self problems.
I'm gonna say like the fact that he decided to make this a like public novel other than just like a private journal makes me think that the author like needed to like get something out there to the public, like needed to explain his mindset on like war and problems there are and solutions he has.
I mean, I like that, like, on the second page of the preface, he talks about, like, how he's not trying to, like, improve or fix, like, what the military's already doing. Like, he makes that clear that, like, he's not trying to change anything. He's just, like, putting his ideas and thoughts out on a page.
Okay, let's see what else. Well, kind of jumping into the first chapter, I like took a note on page 9, and it was this paragraph. It's like, you can't force consciousness or spiritual maturity. Teenage warriors like to fight, drink, screw, and rock and roll. You can, however, put people in situations where consciousness and spiritual maturity can grow rapidly. If those people know what to look for, it's called
Initiation.
Yeah, initiation. I noted that because I like can't imagine how scary it is because like we're teenagers right now, and like all we're thinking about is like grades, and like hanging out with friends and having a boyfriend or like prom or dance, and like at this time like teenagers were going to war and like they're like getting thrown out of the whole system of like what their life has always been, and it's like changing. It's kind of scary. I can't imagine. I don't think I could do it.
Backing up a little bit on, like, the first page of chapter 1 with, like, the little italicized portion, like, the warriors deal with death. They take life away from others. This is normally the role of God. Like, I noted that because it's just, like, very powerful ideas in there. Like, and I like that he uses quotes at the beginning of each of his chapters that, like, tie in with what, like, the rest of the chapter's about. So you kind of get, it's almost like you get like a synopsis of what the chapter will be about.
Kind of going back to what Taylor was talking about, like the getting like thrown out of the system early or whatever. And on page 25, there was this piece that I noted, and it was like, when it comes time to leave the world of combat behind for the world of ordinary life, it is going to be more difficult to do the more we blur the two worlds together. How can you return home if you never left? That just kind of, like, I don't know, I really liked that, because, like, I don't know, war really changes people, and, like, I don't know, I just thought it was cool how he worded that, like, how can you return home if you never left, and stuff like that.
I think one of the first instances that the author describes like the good, the bad, and the ugly of war, it's on page 1. He describes the ugly, mainly how he describes Zoomer's injury, and also describes how they're faced against a cold drizzle and a harsh environment.
I like that, like, on page 2, like, he talks about, like, his grandfather. So, like, he talks a little bit, like, about his personal self and how that, like, relates to some parts of the war. Like, how he can connect his own life at home to what it was like when he was at the war.
Try to, when you're talking about what he writes, to try and talk about what do you think he means? You know, like kind of after you've read it, kind of paraphrase. Let us know what you mean. What is it that you like about it? How do you see that connection? Just a little bit more of your own ideas.
on page 23, it said, or he was talking about how it said to numb all the conflicting feelings, I proceeded to drink too much. And then, like, going back on page 14, it was like, I gulped the rest of my beer and sat the glass down firmly. Like, drinking was kind of his way to cope with the war and what was happening.
So I haven't read this yet, but I'm just gonna correlate like things that I've heard from the conversation so far to the other book that I've been reading, which is a lot like this. I think it just has different points of view from a lot of different people, and I just think it's crazy. Like reading it from one perspective is one thing because there's a lot here, but like there's so many different people that had to go through this. I don't know if he mentioned that or not, but like just reading this and taking it times like thousands of people is really a lot to take in. Yeah.
I kind of thought it was like crazy how they had to deal with like the death of others and like the guilt of it and like responsibility because they felt like it was on them, and like us nowadays we don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, and that's like one thing that I always notice when I read books like this is like you always think that the thing that would traumatize them would be like seeing their friends die or seeing, you know, people they don't even know die. But one of the worst things that they talk about is like killing somebody else. Like in the book I'm reading, Voices from Vietnam, there's a guy and he takes like a pickaxe and just drives it into another guy's head, and he's like an enemy, of course, he's trying to kill him, but he feels so bad about it that he thinks about just doing it to himself, like because he hears the noises coming from this guy, and like they have to deal with that every day afterwards. And I think that would almost be harder than like all the other things you see, is knowing that you caused some of that. Yeah. Welcome.
Okay. On page, wait, let me see if this is, yeah. On page 40, he was talking about how there was like a bunch of like men that were like burnt to death, like they were like burning. They were like, some of them were still trying to find cover on this hill, and that him and like some of the other guys were like making jokes, and it says in quotes it says, we got crispy critters all over the hill, and like he says crispy critters was a popular breakfast cereal at the time. And then he talks about like if he had been the man he is today, like back then, he would have felt way different about seeing all those bodies. But like being in the war like that, you're kind of like numb towards that, and like you have the mindset that that's your job, like that's what you're doing, that like you're fighting for your country, that's your job, and like all the other guys are like that, so it kind of influences your brain. I feel like that's what he's trying to say on that whole page with seeing those bodies.
Yeah, I think that's why it would be so hard to come back to like all the hatred and stuff that they face, because all these people are just following what they have to do. It's not even just like someone's telling them they have to do this, they can't just go home. I think that would be really awful, because no matter how bad they feel, there's nothing they can do about it, really.
And it's not like it happened back then, and like him talking about it now, he wishes he could go back, but there's really nothing you can do about it. So I feel like by writing this book, he's really just trying to change your perspective.
Yeah.
On page 2, they said like pain was the key to life, and like I don't know, just kind of stuck out to me because now we don't really think of like life that way, but back then they thought like they felt like a lot of pain. So
What does that mean? Like, get beyond just what they thought. What do you think that means, that pain is the key to life? Like, how would you take some of those things and think, okay, how does that apply more generally or broadly? How can pain be the key to life?
Well, if you go through a lot of pain, the tougher you get. Like, the more, I feel like back then, you grew up, parents were harder, schools were stricter, and I believe back then, pain, as they say, like, makes you stronger and prepares you to be an adult.
Yeah.
But really, the downfall is some of that messes you up as an adult. So, like, this whole, like, parenting thing has changed nowadays too. I feel like it should be more stricter, but back then it was old school, like, the more pain, the stronger you'll be.
And I feel like without pain, you wouldn't really have the experiences that really matter. Because, like, I don't know if you think about it, like when you lose somebody close to you or like family members, that's still pain, but it makes changes. I don't know how to explain it, but those changes are like
And like,
leading up to who you are gonna be. Like kind of what you said. I just don't know how to explain.
and it like makes you appreciate things more.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
going through the death of a family member.
Yeah.
It opens your eyes, like, it makes you realize you have to live in the now with the people you still have, like.
And it makes those experiences worth something. Otherwise, it just doesn't really matter. Like, if I'm going to spend my entire life with Tasia, I'm not really going to appreciate her. But if I know that someday she's not going to be here, I'm going to be like, hey, Tasia's pretty cool. Yeah. All right.
Okay, on page 49, it was talking about like the bad parts of the war, and the author said, I recognized he was human. I was conscious right then that he was young and terrified like me. Then he tried to kill me, and I killed him. I know today that I did far worse things, burning men with napalm, shelling men with Willie Pete. Shells that spewed burning white phosphorus that was impossible to put out, and that burned deep holes right through men's bodies. That piece right there was really graphic and gruesome, kind of gross, but
That's a good example of the ugly of war too.
mhm.
I marked it. On page 2, he goes into, like, I heard Zoomer all night, and he was like, we were running the 400, one lung doing for 2, and in a body of shock. Like, it was, like, he gave good description, like, in and out, in the fog, the sighing sound of monsoon wind through the jungle, out the hot, painful breath. So, like, he used good, like, ways to compare the two, like, the in and out of breathing, so it, like, gave you a little bit of, like, an insight to, like, how he felt during the, like, when Zoomer was, like, kind of slowly dying in front of him.
Trinity just reminded me of something that kind of reminds me of like when we were writing our Huck Finn essays. I chose my topic on why they should have the racial slurs in the book instead of like censoring them out. I think that's a good point in this book too, is like when you said it's really gruesome and it's really graphic and like gross, I think that it's important to tell people that side of the story too, because if you don't know how like awful it really was, people are going to look at it and kind of just pass it by. They won't understand that we can't go through this again because of how awful it was. That's like what I said about slavery too. Like if you don't have every little bit of the bad, people aren't going to understand it fully and like know why it's so terrible and why it's going to happen again. Yeah. And then I had one more thing, which was like young people. Like you were saying, someone was saying that it was like young people in this war, and that's what I think a lot of people don't keep in their minds when they talk about like Vietnam. Is it was young go first. And that's what I read about a lot when I was reading about the draft. Is like they would take 19-year-olds over like 26-year-olds because they wanted them to not have time for life. So now you have like an 18-year-old with a gun who just watched his best friend die, and they're like going to be angry and really messed up. And way more people are going to die than probably would have if they had been older, more experienced people and things like that. Yeah, that's what I had to say.
I definitely agree with that. Page 40, he talks about, like, pseudo-speciation of, like, his, like, victims, I guess you could call them. So, like, he would basically just try to, like, make people less human so that, like, it didn't hurt yourself so much when you were killing people. page 40. So like he just talks about like he didn't kill people, he killed like creatures more, so that like you weren't like hurt so bad by like killing a person. It was just that you're killing like an animal or something.
Okay, so on page 49, he says, when I was in Vietnam killing people, I never felt evil or guilty of sin. I was raised a Lutheran, so I definitely would have known a guilty feeling when I had one. However, when I returned to the States, I got the message somebody had done something quite bad in Vietnam. And it must have been us, since we were the only ones there. Like, his feeling is kind of like, I know this is like kind of a dumb example, but like when you're taking a test and you're like the first one done, and you keep looking around and you're waiting for other people to like hand it in, so you don't, so the test doesn't seem like in your head you're like, was this too easy to be true or something like that? That's like
second guessing yourself.
yeah, that's kind of the feeling like he had, like, should I not be alive? Like, what did I do wrong? Like, there's men who suffered and like I really didn't. I feel like that's what he's trying to say right there. And I feel like, yeah, that's has to be kind of like an awkward feeling, like to get back and be able to be with your family when there was men out there that didn't get to come back.
On page 52, he starts like integrating with like the stories from like Hindu traditions, and I like that like he takes like his own personal problems or issues with the war and he kind of compares them, and like how where was it? Like page 53, but saying it's okay to kill my own brother because just maybe the universe is a vast recycling plant had about the same effect on Ardrona that it could have any of us today. So like he talks about like how like it was controversial even in like myths to like go killing people because what was his name? Krishna, the